Damon here from Life Mastery Gym. What if you could suddenly remove all of your limiting beliefs? What would that do for your life? That's what I go into in this demonstration. Now, I know the demonstration is long, so I'm going to keep this really short. What I do in this demonstration is probably the core of the change work that I do with my clients, and really help people resolve those limiting beliefs, but not just get rid of those limiting beliefs. Actually turn those limiting beliefs into empowering beliefs that serve you in becoming the person you want to be, and in becoming the person who has the things that you want to have, who accomplishes the things that you want to accomplish. If you would like to work with me in a small group of people where I teach and coach this model, the model that I'm using in this demonstration, if you go down to the description there, you'll see a link, and you click on that link. Sometimes we're doing free classes, sometimes we're not. From the time of this video, we plan on doing a few free classes over the coming 30 days, but you might be watching this video later, but still check. Who knows what's going on? Who knows what we might be doing? Go to the description down here and click that link and find out. I have Lauren here, who is from my level 2 group training and coaching, and we're going to explore mistakes. We're going to explore the times when you're not acting in alignment with your quality or with your value. Now, the thing here is that we're not going to get any saucy details of terrible things she's done, because we're going to stay on content. We're going to refer to her quality as Q, and any other thing that comes up where we're talking about examples and counterexamples, we're going to keep it all to the technical terms so that she doesn't have to tell me anything about any of these mistakes or what actually happens. She can stay completely out of content, which helps us move faster, because if you get too bogged down in content, you can lose, as a coach, you can lose your perspective, and then it becomes you as a coach trying to use content to move your client who's stuck in content to their outcome, and that becomes even more difficult. So if you stay in structure and you keep moving the client back to structure, you're going to be able to do this a lot faster and more efficiently. So another reason that we're doing this is where true healing can take place. Now, we don't know right now if Lauren has any scars or wounds or things like that, but it can come up. And this is one of the ways in which I help people heal. And this what I've used on myself to heal from a lot of old wounds that hold us back, because a wound will sort of emerge or manifest in your life as a limiting belief, or a limiting belief about yourself, which then becomes a limiting belief about the world or what you can do or what's possible. So the other aspect of this is, I hear people say, well, I've learned from that mistake and I've moved on. And actually, I so rarely meet anyone who has truly learned from a mistake and moved on. The truth is usually they learned something, which is always good. And when they say they've moved on, they've pushed this mistake into a dark corner and they try not to think about it, which means it goes into their unconscious and it's still affecting them. It's still limiting them. They don't realize it. So if you want to truly learn from a mistake, that's what you're going to get here. And I don't know of any other better way to do this. And when I learned how to do this, which is all a part of the self-concept model, it changed everything, and it changes everything for my clients, because if you can actually take a mistake, something you don't like to think about, something that is affecting you, limiting you, even though you've told yourself that you've learned from it, even though you've told yourself that you've moved on, if you can take that and not just neutralize it, which is what I think people, their best, the best thing that they can hope for a lot of times that they think is to neutralize something, a mistake, a problem. But we take this much further. We don't just neutralize it. We turn this into a positive example of something that's going to propel you forward and becoming more and more who you want to be. So I'm sure you don't want any of that, do you? Okay. All right.
Gosh.
So that's just my little spiel to get you
Perfect.
motivated about what we're about to do.
Yeah, I can't wait.
All right. So you ready?
Yes.
All right. So let's first get a little familiar with your database here. And when I refer to database, what I'm talking about here is She has a quality that she's very certain about. We're going to refer to as Q. She also likes this about herself. I hope so, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And so how does this even happen? How do you have a quality of your identity in the first place? And that's because you have a lot of experiences of that support you having this generalization about yourself. So if I think of myself as kind, then I think about, well, how do I know that I'm kind? And maybe I see a quick summary reference, an image or a voice that tells me I am. But if I start opening that up and exploring that, I will find many examples of me being kind. I will find examples of me appreciating other people's kindness. And then all that comes together for me to make a generalization about myself. Hey, I'm kind. And I just know that. I like that about myself. And I don't even think about it. It's very unconscious. It's just because there's no doubt about it. And so that's what we're going to first explore with Lauren. And then we're going to take this even deeper. So you have a quality that you're certain about. And are you Q?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. So that's a very good congruent yes, but you looked up into your right, so you referenced something, which I assume is your reference. She went to her summary, and you probably normally don't do that. You probably are doing that because you're kind of on the spot. This is a video right now, and so another way that I can check her congruence, compare, I can say, "Is your name Lauren?"
Yes.
Okay, so it looked very similar. You saying yes to that quality and you saying yes to your name being Lauren. Pretty much the same, except you did do that little look and
That's
reference.
funny. Yeah, that is where I go up here to the right.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about how you have that set up. So when you think of you being Q and your examples of being Q, where do you put that? I think we already know, but go ahead and point to where that database is.
Yeah, I see it. They're up here to the right, and I would say like a little bit above eye level down to my waist, but primarily like somewhere in between there.
Okay, and so she already revealed to us the modality. She said, I see. So we know that she sees. And that would have been another question. I would want to know how are they showing up? Is it something visual, auditory, or kinesthetic? And so she already revealed that to us. So a few more questions. Do you see these examples simultaneously or sequentially?
Sequentially.
Okay, so another good thing to know. And are you naturally associated into them or are you disassociated?
I'm usually disassociated.
Okay. And how easy is it for you to associate?
It's actually been quite difficult, and I'm not sure why that is, but it's way easier for me to be outside of it.
Okay. That might come in handy later. So a lot of what I'm asking for here is just to get familiar with her database. Some of this might come in handy later. I don't know yet. And just submodalities. Give me some basic submodalities. I think you told me one, which was the size. Can you show me with your hand how big the images are?
They're small. They're not like minuscule, but they're smaller.
Okay.
And they're kind of just neutral color. They're not like super bright. They're not super dark. Yeah.
Okay. One more question. Do you get any auditory when you see your examples?
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. Pretty normal. Okay. So the reason why how we create confidence and self-esteem is when we behave in a way that aligns with one of our values. So I value kindness. I do something kind. I feel good about myself, and it's just one more example that adds to my certainty that I'm kind. So that certainty creates confidence, and I feel good about myself. So if you take your highest values and you turn them into qualities that you're very, very certain about, that's when you have this unlimited self-esteem, this unlimited confidence. This is when you're willing to take risks and do things because you're not concerned about others validating you. You self-validate. And this is where it gets really, really powerful. Now, what about the times that we feel lacking in confidence, we feel lacking in certainty, or we feel bad about ourselves? Well, the reason for that is because we've acted in a way that violates our values, that goes against our values. So if I think of myself as a kind person and then I do something and I realize, whoa, that was cruel, I'm going to feel bad about myself. And that's a good thing to know because that creates what we call a feedback system. So I get the information back. The feedback is I did something that it upset somebody or it hurt them. And then I go, oh, I need to make that adjustment. So I go and apologize and I say, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again. This experience is what we call a counterexample. It goes counter to your values. So nobody is perfect, and it doesn't matter how certain you are about a quality of yours, you inevitably have examples of acting in opposition or in violation of that value. One other thing I want to say about it is that feeling bad, this is going to help. This is very healing on its own. And when I heard this comes from Steve Andreas. I think I read it. I don't think he told it directly to me. This changed everything for me. That feeling bad about yourself, or that just feeling bad when you act in violation of one of your values, that feeling bad is an indication of your degree of commitment to that value.
That's cool. That's
Yeah.
Powerful. Makes
Right.
sense.
So you can take any mistake you've made, and just by acknowledging that you feel bad about it, that's an indication of your commitment to the value. So it's an incredible reframe, and you can take any mistake you've ever made and just apply that to it, and you'll immediately feel better about it, because you'll say, well, wait a minute, this isn't about how terrible of a person I am. It's about how committed I am to my values. So that's a good sort of foundation to lay before we get into the work that we're going to do, because what we're going to do can be unpleasant, and if it at any point it feels unpleasant to you, tell me. We'll make it okay, because you're going to have to look at or acknowledge mistakes, and that can be very unpleasant for people. But there are ways we can do this so that it's not. You shouldn't have to experience pain as you go through these processes. In fact, what I like to tell people all the time is change and transformation does not require pain. A lot of times we have that belief, and that's what keeps us from moving in that direction of change and transformation. It's not true. We can certainly do this without any pain. So if at any point you feel like you feel uneasy, or it's there's something that's just doesn't feel good, let me know. We'll make some adjustments so that you don't have to experience that. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. So there are times when you've acted in ways, or you have examples of counter to cue. So we can call that counter cue, counter examples. So you have counter examples to cue. So think about a few of those examples with your cue.
Okay.
All right. So where are they?
They're actually lower. I feel like they're down here to the right.
Okay. So that you have a sense that they're outside of the database of cue?
Yes.
Okay. And how are they showing up, or what modality? Is it something you're seeing, hearing, or tactile, kinesthetic feeling?
Something I'm seeing.
Something you're seeing. So it's in the same modality. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And are they also sequential, or are they simultaneous?
They are sequential.
Okay, so they're similar to your current database. Are you
Mm-hmm.
associated into them or disassociated?
Disassociated.
Okay, and that's a healthier way to deal with your people. When people feel stuck in the past, or stuck in a mistake that they can't seem to find their way out of, a lot of times they're overly associated. Like they are so associated, they don't know how to step out of it. And just by getting them to step out of it, a lot of times they go, wait a minute, this wasn't so bad, and I didn't do such a bad thing here, because they're able to see themselves finally, and they're able to see more context. So it's good that you're already there. You're making this really easy for me. Now, as far as like size, are they the same size as your examples of Q, or do they have a different size?
I think they feel smaller, like they feel farther away.
Okay. And about how many are there?
I have two main ones that I keep seeing, but they're like the two main ones are like various situations that have kind of been recurring in different periods of time.
Okay. Ooh, this is you have a recurring one.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, you ready to get rid of that?
100%.
Okay. Well, we will check back with you after this demonstration. We'll maybe do a follow-up video, because I think if you have as soon as you said that, I lit up inside. I was like, ooh, we got something fun we can do here that's should really make a difference. Okay. what else do I want to know about your, I think I know everything I need. Well, you said there's two main ones, but are there more than just the two? Give me a
Mm,
ballpark figure if about how many you think there are.
like in different contexts? Like,
Oh
is
yeah,
that
yeah, that's even better because yeah. So same. So we're working with Q, which is a sort of a general quality, right? It's not like super high level. It's not skill level. It's somewhere in between. So it's very general. Do you want this Q in every area of your life?
yes.
Okay. So we need to make sure we address the counterexamples the same way. So the counterexamples, you have multiple contexts in which you have counterexamples.
Yes. But I'm only able to think of like one other one. Like in different contexts. Like in the one main context, there's a bunch of reoccurring examples.
Okay.
But like in different areas, probably three.
Three contexts or three examples?
Three contexts.
Okay. So we'll see something interesting here. We'll see if the change generalizes to those contexts as well. They may or may not.
Okay.
What I would say is if there's a way to sort of relax your separation between contexts, you might have very carefully put these dividing lines in these contexts because you're afraid of like these two big counterexamples generalizing to these other contexts. You might have put some shields or walls up, and that's okay. But when we make those changes, though, we want them to be powerful enough to generalize to all contexts.
Okay.
So just relax that part of you. Uh, but I think it's a very positive intent. Whatever part of you did that, drew those lines. It's being meticulous and careful. So we want to honor that. But so we want to communicate to that part that we're going to make some changes that will make that the division not necessary anymore.
Okay.
Sometimes it can be just as easy as giving instructions to your unconscious about that. Okay. Now let's work a little fast and dirty here. I just want to see what happens. And I want you to do this slowly and I want you to do it one at a time. And here's why. If you're too careless with this or you try to do it all at once, things can kind of blow up in your face, and literally because you're visualizing this can blow up in your face and it can be very, very unpleasant. So for example, when you've experienced sort of like a crash state, like we're doing some sort of performance, public speaking, something like that, and suddenly you just kind of like crashed and you couldn't get yourself back together. One of the reasons that is often is you're telling yourself over and over not to mess up, not to mess up, not to mess up, but your unconscious just hears the information, doesn't know really what you're trying to tell it to do. It just hears mess up, mess up, mess up, and then it starts showing you information about you messing up because that's the signal it's getting. To negate something, you still have to bring up the information. So if I say don't mess up, you have to first bring up messing up to know what I'm talking about, and then you have to consciously negate it. Well, the damage is already done. You've already brought the content into your mind, and this is why when we're trying not to make a mistake, we often do, because we have to bring up that content of making a mistake. So when that happens, that's when usually it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The very thing you're not wanting to do happens. And so this can happen the same way when we're working with counterexamples. That can blow up and get big, and then you kind of crash, and then it's very difficult to move on from that point until you've given it some time and waited for a while. You don't want that to happen. You want to keep control over this, and one way you're going to do that is to be slow about it and to do one at a time. And so here's what I want you to do. I want you to one at a time move each counterexample into your database of positive examples and just let them integrate wherever they want to go. Just drop them in, let them go. When you feel like they've landed somewhere, then go to the next one, bring it over slowly, keeping control over it, drop it into your database, allow it to integrate. When you have a sense that it's found a place where it's set, then go to the next one. And let's just do this for about 5 counterexamples, and then we'll check in with you.
Okay. Okay.
How do you feel?
It feels good. It feels, yeah, it felt easy, but like I've never done that on my own.
Okay. So go ahead and go through your database now. You said you do it sequentially, so I guess it's kind of like a montage. You flip through it. And then notice that about maybe every 10 or so examples, 5 to 10 examples, you see one of those counterexamples. But here's the other thing too. You want to make sure it's coded differently. One of the ways that we can do that is make it a little bit smaller than the other examples, make it a little bit darker, so that when you see it, you immediately recognize that it's a counterexample, not a positive example. So go ahead and if you haven't made that adjustment as you're going through your database, go ahead and make that adjustment when you see the counterexample. If it shows up looking very much like one of your positive examples, change it in such a way that you'll know right away anytime you see it again that it's a counterexample.
Okay.
I should have given you another instruction. As you're going through your database and you're noticing counterexamples, I want you to check in with yourself. Does your quality feel stronger, weaker, or it makes no difference with the counterexamples in the database?
So check in if Q feels stronger or weaker with my counterexamples.
In the database, yes, as compared to how it felt when they weren't in the database.
Okay. Yeah, it feels just like not like me. Cause like one part of Q for me is so strong, and the other part is so recurring that it's been so much like angst for me. So when I see him, I'm like, that's so not me, but I don't know why that area always seemed to struggle.
So what that tells me is that this has not fully integrated. So the counterexamples are in there, but it's sort of like oil and water.
Okay.
They're not mixing. So when you saw the counterexample, what did you notice about, like, say, the submodalities compared to your positive examples? What was different, or was it all the same?
I was pretty, I don't know if this is correct, but like in my counterexamples, I'm pretty stationary and I'm just like sitting doing something. So like to me, it's like me overthinking is how I see it. But in my like really positive examples, like I'm moving and it's like really lively.
Okay, so she's getting into a little bit of content here. And so what I'm talking more about is I like the lively part about it, that makes sense. But I'm talking more of the size of the image, the brightness, darkness, how rich are the colors. Does all that seem to look identical to your positive examples,
No, I would say it's more subdued.
or subdued? Okay.
Hmm.
Now, that's the fast and dirty way. And for some people that works really well. And I'm glad it didn't, because what we're going to go into is probably the way that I use more often with clients, because it's more certain. It's also what I use with myself, because it for me it's more powerful, and it's really where you learn a lot more about the mistakes that you've made. So I'm kind of happy that because some people, you'll just put those counterexamples in there and it's like, whoa, it's so much stronger now, and it feels great, which is really counterintuitive. When I first came across this part of the model, I thought it was very counterintuitive to mix your counterexamples into a positive database. I was like, why would you do that? And I'll explain why a little bit later. But it actually does make it stronger. And there's a real danger to having extremely pure databases. But again, I'll explain that later. So go ahead and it's a lot easier to pull your counterexamples out, and you can do it all at once. You don't risk the same problems you might have by dropping them in. So go ahead and just pull them all out and put them back where you had them before. They probably want to go there anyway.
Yeah.
Go back to your room.
Yeah, they're in their spot.
Okay.
They're back.
Now you said there were two main counterexamples. Is there one out of the two that's even stronger? That sort of the whole generalization about this counterexamples. Like you said, I'm not myself. That was one
Hmm.
indication that you're actually experiencing a generalization, a belief about yourself that these counterexamples support. Not myself. So out of those two, is there one that seems to be the one that's sort of holding that generalization in place, that all of these other examples generalize around to create this self-reflective generalization about yourself?
I feel like one is stronger. Yes.
Okay. Go ahead and pop that one out and bring it into what we'll call your workstation, and make sure that it's close enough that you can work with it, but not so close that it feels unpleasant. You want a little bit of unpleasantness, just like a tiny taste of the poison, so that you know why this doesn't feel good, and you know that you have motivation to do something about it. If you push it too far back, people will just go, oh, well, it doesn't bother me anymore. But it's not gone, it's still there, and it hasn't been transformed. So we don't want to do that either. So close enough that you can work with it, but not too close that it feels overwhelming.
It's good. Yeah. Yeah. I have it in its place.
Good. Now, before you were saying you're pretty naturally disassociated from all of your examples, or is this one the same? You're disassociated? Okay.
Yes.
So you see yourself sort of like in a movie, going about doing whatever it was that was counter to Q.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, what was the positive intent of whatever it was that you did in this example? Now, this throws up people off a little bit. They will say, you know, like, well, I made a mistake. It's positive about that. Of course, you made a mistake. That's what we're working with here. And of course, making a mistake means things didn't work out the way that you wanted them to. But that doesn't mean that your intent was bad. You didn't intend to make a mistake. I've never met anyone who intended to make a mistake. You had a clear intention here, and that intention was positive. And even if on the surface it may seem like your intent wasn't positive, like, well, I wanted to hurt that person, I wanted to embarrass that person. Okay, that's an intent. But if we go back behind that and say, well, you know, what was the intent of that intent? If you go back far enough, you will find that all intentions originate as a positive. All intentions originate from something of value, a value that you were seeking, a value that did not get fulfilled, because that's why it's what we call a mistake. But had you fulfilled it, this would have not been a mistake. You would have fulfilled one of your values, and it would have become a positive example of whatever value that was that you were looking to fulfill.
Mm-hmm.
So do you know what your intent was?
Yes.
And can you word it in such a way that it doesn't reveal what you did or what happened? You can say like, my intent was I wanted to be loved, or my intent was I just wanted to make people happy. You know, something vague like that, so you don't give away the content.
Can it be like what my intent was for myself versus
sure.
like what
Sure.
I think my intent was just I was trying to feel like I was making progress.
So your intention was to make progress.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And that didn't happen.
No.
Okay. Now, just for fun, let's see if we can take this a little bit deeper. In this situation, what would progress have done for you in this situation? And again, be very vague about it. Don't give me the details of what happened.
I think progress would have led to or would have facilitated the life I really wanted.
Hmm.
Like move me closer to that.
Okay. And then what would that have done for you?
Would have allowed me to feel free.
Okay. So in this situation, your positive intent was progress, and sort of what you can say your meta outcome, but it's more a value. The higher level value was freedom, which is a very high level value.
Mm-hmm.
Now, just in looking at this mistake or this counterexample, and realizing that really what you did was about freedom and progress. How does it feel now that now that you know that?
I like that because I do believe freedom's probably my highest value. But it still bugs me that I'm just like, I felt like I was just shuffling. You know what I mean? I'm like, I don't know. It feels good, but it also like annoys me at the same time, honestly.
Yeah. No, that's not going to fix it. But it usually softens things up a little bit, which is always helpful.
Right.
Now, when we think about it, everything that we do has an intention. And our disappointment has to do in our intentions. And I use intention and value interchangeably. It's the same thing. The mistake is really the feeling of a mistake, or the feeling bad, is that that intention didn't get fulfilled, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what we will always find when an intention or a value goes unfulfilled, it's because we are not accessing a resource within ourselves. Or it could be more than one, it could be multiple resources. Because we have all the resources within ourselves that we need to really do anything, to self-validate, to go after what we want, and regardless of outside circumstances, to still fulfill our values, to still be happy, to still do all of those things. Now, a lot of people say, well, what do you mean by resource? So resource is an intangible thing that I say intangible and then I say thing. It's so weird. But it's an intangible thing that is within us. Our ability, it's all of our abilities. When you think of yourself or someone as being resourceful, what are you really saying about that person? What you're saying is that in the moment, they can adjust and adapt to find within themselves whatever it is they need to step up to the situation and do their best. We don't control circumstances. We can influence circumstances, but we don't control them. So all that you can do is your best in that situation. So to contrast this, I can go to another extreme. What would be a state of complete resourcelessness? That would be panic. If you took away all of your, or took access away, because we don't actually lose our resources, but if you took access to your resources away, all of them, you would go into panic. Even if there wasn't a panic situation going on, the feeling of not having any resources is a panic state. So when we're in a crisis situation, and because of fear, we narrow our focus so much, we actually lose lose contact or connection with our resources. That's when we go into a state of panic. And they always say, well, don't panic. Well, why do they say don't panic? They say don't panic because you lose access to your resources. And when you calm down and relax a little bit, you can regain access to all of your resources. And this is also why we meditate. This is why hypnosis works, because you have the person relax first, and then they're able to connect with their resources, and then you can have them relive an experience with those resources, which is what technically we're going to do here. So when you look at this example, a counterexample, and you see what happened,
Mm-hmm.
you know what your positive intent was. You're kind of like, your short-term positive intent was to make progress, but in the long run, it was about freedom. It was connected to freedom, which is very, very powerful. And now that you look at it, what was a resource or resources that were missing that, had you accessed them within yourself, you would have fulfilled the positive intention of progress and freedom, regardless of the outside circumstances, how those things turned out.
Do I tell you?
You can tell me the resource, but the resource should be an intangible, and it should be vague enough that it doesn't give away the content.
Okay.
And if you're not sure if it's a resource, you can ask me, but again, try to stay away from anything that reveals the content of the situation.
Would focus be one?
Absolutely. That's a great one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I feel like that's the main one.
Okay. Is there anything else that seems to come up?
Maybe truth? Is that one?
Truth isn't really a resource, but honesty would be a resource if you're an honest.
I was just going to say, like, honest with myself.
Yeah, that'll work. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with those, and we can always add more resources. So it's not like this is your only shot at it. We can add more and more. So here's what I want you to do, and I want you to create. I want you to take complete creative liberty here. You're going to re-edit this movie, and what's going to inform your edit decisions is progress and freedom, your two values that we discovered here. So that informs your decision here. And you're going to add in those resources of honesty and focus. And you're just going to see what happens to this movie, okay? Now, here's the thing. One way it might go is it might actually change the circumstances. That's fine. Or it might just change who you are in that moment. Either way is fine, okay? Now, one other instruction. sometimes people experience resistance when they start creating this movie. And the reason for that is there's a part of themselves that likes to stay grounded, knows, wants to keep a clear separation between what's fact and fiction, what's fantasy and what's reality. So that part of you might come up because it's saying, well, whoa, wait a minute, you can't, you're trying to fool you're trying to fool yourself into believing this is what happened. And that's not what we're doing here. So if that part comes up, all you do is you just say, look, we're doing an exploration here. We're not trying to pretend like something happened that didn't. It's just an exercise. And so just giving you that as a heads up, that happens sometimes because people are trying to do it and they're trying to force themselves to make this movie and it's not happening. And that is often what is holding them back. So are you clear on the instructions?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead and go for it and let me know when you're done.
But wait, just to reiterate, I'm putting those new resources into this movie and basically trying to change it.
You're not trying to, you will.
Okay.
So remember what is guiding this movie is progress and freedom, your values.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So that's how if you were sitting down and editing and you're wondering, okay, how do I edit this? There's so many different ways you can edit things. That's your guide. That's the headlights that are shining the way. You want freedom and progress, and so your decisions are aligned to that. And now you're plugging in focus and honesty.
Okay, got it. Okay.
Right. So how's this new movie when you look at it?
The new movie feels good because that looks like me.
Okay. And I'm not as convinced that it's it's the new movie that we want. It doesn't sound very compelling.
Mm-hmm.
Is anything missing that you think needs to be added to this?
If we're like creating a really great movie, then what would need to be added then would be like I almost go forward more so then I have evidence that I've created what I wanted, and now in that moment I'm just progress and freedom. I'm just keep chugging along.
Okay. So it tells me you kind of neutralized the mistake. So we didn't get to where we really want to be. So
Okay.
make it the most compelling movie that you can possibly make. Like so much so that when you see this, you go, yeah, I want to be her. Like that's who I want to be going forward. So if you need to make it bigger, brighter, add other things to it, just go for it. This is the movie, not just that like, okay, it feels better. This is the movie that I am compelled. Like just you want to be to the point where when you watch this movie, it feels like it wants to suck you into it. Like you want to become her right away. We don't want to do that, and I'll tell you why later. But that's when you really re-edited this movie.
Okay. So my question is then, like, I'm thinking of that specific example. Am I editing that specific example, or am I just taking it to generalize and make a great movie?
The root is always there. The root is always going to be in what happened in this situation. So you have complete creative freedom here, but it is as it relates to what happened in this situation.
Okay. Yeah, that one feels good.
Okay.
It does feel good because I made it bigger and brighter, and I added in more detail.
Okay. Now, just by looking at your face, looking at your nonverbals, that aligns very well. You look happy with this.
Yes.
So just check in one more time. Is there any way to tune this up even more so that, like I said, it's so compelling? Like this is the woman you want to be. This is the woman not so much that you wish you had been, because we're going to get past that. This is, if you ever find yourself in a similar situation, you know exactly who you want to be, you know exactly what your values are, and you have some details here that tells you how to go about doing that. And so this should be really exciting, because this is about freedom and progress.
Yeah. I
Okay,
just added in more details.
good,
Because I know what it is that I want. So then to just make it more alive, it feels really good.
excellent. Okay. Now, at any point, did that resistance come up, or a part of you say, well, wait a minute, we can't rewrite history here. We can't deceive ourselves into believing something else happened?
There I would say no, it did not.
Okay, and that's fine. It doesn't mean it should have or anything like that.
Yeah.
Now, let's take the movie of what actually happened and archive it. So there is a real version, right? So what I mean by archive it, let's make it really small and dim the colors or make it black and white or wash the colors out. So really what it becomes is it's like you would have an archive, in the basement of a museum or something. It's where they keep all the other stuff, and you really have to look for it to find it. So go ahead and do that. And when you do that, then stick it side by side with the new movie you created so that they're touching at the edges.
That's crazy. That is wild.
So tell
I
me
don't
what,
even, yeah.
tell me about that when you say it's crazy and it's wild.
I don't know because it's crazy that you can go in and literally edit a movie that's like your own memory, but it literally feels so different.
Tell me about
And
that.
I was able to associate actually for once, like, and I didn't like attach to it though. Like I could see the difference and I could see kind of where I was like messing up per se, but like it felt so good to be able to rewrite it or reproduce it. Like I didn't take it so personally, but I was just like, okay, those are facts. It is what it is, but like this is what I wanted, and I do believe that that is a possibility.
So going forward, instead of having a recurring thought about how you made a mistake,
Hmm.
instead you have this new compelling movie that is big and compelling, so it captures your attention. What do you think is better to keep referencing?
The bigger, better, compelling movie.
Yeah. So you're more likely to become her and do those things rather than feeding yourself this mistake and trying to tell yourself not to do it again, which is basically telling your unconscious to do it again. Now, the if you ever need to fall back though on what actually happened so that you're not deceiving yourself, or if there was someone else involved and they say, hey, you remember when this thing happened? It's still there. You can still reference it. It's just
Hmm.
not going to catch your attention too much anymore. And if it does, it's attached to this new movie, which is like a new vision of who you want to be going forward. So it's going to immediately be compelled to this new movie to move you forward rather than keep you stuck in an old mistake.
Okay. So
And
you
this,
see it as just like ammo, almost like to propel you forward, like it's use it to your advantage.
yeah, absolutely. So, clear your mind for a moment. What did you have for breakfast?
A yogurt bowl.
Okay, really? No, it's just to clear your mind. Now think about this mistake or this counterexample. What happens?
It just is what it is. Like I don't know.
Did you see well, that's good, but did you see the new movie?
No.
Okay, go back in, attach them,
Okay.
and actually hear it like Velcro sticking. Like when two things get stuck, so it's there and they stay.
Okay.
All right. So, and did you even hear it? Because like it helps add another. Okay.
Yes, that was helpful.
Okay. And so with your yogurt, what did you have to drink?
Water.
Okay. All right. Now think about the counterexample.
I saw it that time.
Okay. Now this is actually going to happen to you unconsciously now. So you don't have to think about this. You don't have to practice it. Anytime there's a reference, and this is what happens, we see something, we hear something, and then our mind goes into free association, and then somehow we end up like with, you know, you saw an ice cream truck, and then somehow bam, 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 all these associations fire off, and then suddenly you're feeling bad because of a memory you had when you were a kid where you know, peed yourself or something like that, you know, some like weird, crazy, that's what happens to us. And then all of that happens unconsciously, but what becomes conscious is the feeling. We go, why do I feel bad? Like, wow, it was just, everything was going well. And then suddenly I feel bad. It's because of that unconscious free association. So what we just created was a very deliberate and intentional association. So that if anything ever, any reference fires off that sequence, it's now going to hit that new movie, which tells you where you want to go, who you want to be, and you're going to feel good because it represents your values. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's really cool.
And this is what it truly means to learn from a mistake, because what that new movie reveals to you is what you could have done instead. And it also gives you a pathway to fulfilling those values that the original intention.
So it's more so like showing you what could have happened, basically.
Could have, but it's more important that if you ever find yourself in a similar situation in the future, now you have a vision, you have a map, you know you know what not to do, and you know exactly what to do. When we have a
Got it.
recurring mistake, we're basically, when we keep feeding ourselves that information, that's what the recurring part is. We're trying to tell ourselves not to do this again. We're trying to tell ourselves what not to do without giving ourselves what to do. How do we do it? How do we correct the mistake? How do we go forward in life? And, you know, finding ourselves in similar situations and doing something different and actually moving ourselves toward what we want. So
Mhm.
often we will find ourselves in a similar situation, making the same mistake, and we'll say, I've done this mistake so many times. Why do I keep making the same mistake over and over again? It's because of that recursive feeding yourself that information, revisiting that negative memory so often, telling yourself what not to do without giving yourself a clear pathway and a vision of what to do instead.
That's powerful.
It's very powerful. And like I said, this is what it truly means to learn from a mistake. So now you've got a positive example here and not a negative example, because
Mhm.
we turn the negative into what did you want instead. And now we have a very clear movie of how to do that, how to be that, and a connection to it. That's you doing that in that movie. It's not like you're watching someone else and wishing you were that way. No, this is you. Okay. Now take this new hybrid of a movie. You have a small archived version of what actually happened. And now you have this new, big, bright, compelling movie. Make sure they're stuck together and they're Velcroed together. They're not coming apart unless you want them to. And now
Mhm.
take this and stick it back in the group of other counterexamples. There was another big bad one in there. And then there were some smaller ones. And have them all touch the new movie at the edges and Velcro them on and see
Should
what
I be
happens.
making the counterexamples smaller too? Like,
Don't
nice.
don't don't do any of those things yet. See what
Okay.
naturally happens when you attach them to
Oops. Here.
see
Sorry.
what, just let happen whatever naturally happens once they are attached to the new movie.
Okay. They were honestly just a little bit darker on their own. They were smaller. Like that new movie is big and bright.
So did they change it all whenever they touched the new movie?
Nope.
Because they were already okay. That's fine. A lot of times they will change, and that tells you that the generalization about this has changed. But not always. Most of the time they do, but they might have already, like you said, had had been changed enough. So before we do the next step, I just want to check in with you. When you look at this group of counterexamples with this new movie there, how do you feel, or what do you think about that?
I mean, I think that it feels relieving. It feels just like it was what it was, but this is like what it is in a way. Like it feels good. In summary, it does feel really good.
Okay.
It's crazy. It's just fun. It's like, yeah, like those other examples just don't seem like me. So it's nice to see like one big bright movie of like what I see myself as.
Okay, that concerns me a little bit because, well, let's do this next step and we'll revisit that, and hopefully
Okay.
we see a change there as well.
Okay.
So now, one at a time, and you can start with your really nice movie if you want. Move them into your database, your positive database of positive examples that support you being Q. Drop them in and let them integrate wherever they want to. And then once that happens, grab another one. And you want to continue to be careful and slow about this. So go ahead and do that.
Okay.
And does it feel like they're in there, they've integrated, they found their place in there?
Yes.
Okay. So now go ahead and review your database. So after every so many positive examples, you're going to encounter one of those counterexamples. You don't want to stay on it. You just want to move through it, just like you're moving through the other examples. And you also want to be clear that it does look different structurally. It's either smaller, it's darker, or any of those things. And not just in a content way, in a structure way, that it's different.
So what am I doing right now? I'm just going back in and revisiting.
Just review your database, how you know that you're Q, all the examples that you have of being Q, and then every, I don't know, 5 or 10 or so, you're going to see one of those counterexamples. And again, don't stay on it, just keep going. And I should also add, the instruction here too is to notice how that feels regarding Q. Does it make it feel stronger, weaker, or no different?
Okay. Okay.
Okay, how did that feel?
It feels good.
Okay, that's not
I
it.
know it probably wasn't compelling. I'm just trying to think. It feels just like, it feels peaceful though, like in a way. Like I could see them all together, but like the bad ones, they just were. Like I could see the positive intent of those more so.
Okay, that's
But
better. That certainly helps. But again, so did it make Q feel stronger, weaker, or no different?
it felt stronger.
Okay, no, we are making progress. Okay, it doesn't have to be, okay, I should have not put such a high standard on it. Because here's the other thing too, change and transformation, contrary to what most people think, is very subtle, or it can be very subtle. I don't want to say it's always subtle.
Mm-hmm.
What comes out of it, the behavioral changes and all that, are sort of what comes after the fact of changing your belief about something. So if it felt stronger, then we did do this right. And so give me a little more information. When you say it feels stronger, stronger how?
I guess I don't even know. I don't know if this is right, but I felt like I was being Q in those counter examples in a way. Like I could see like what I was trying to do here.
Yes. Okay. No, it worked. All right. So here was my
Okay.
concern. My concern is when you were referring to the counterexamples as not me, that tells me you're disconnecting from them, which means that they're not integrated. When you can accept that, yes, indeed, they were you, they don't have to tell you who you're going to be or who you are now. This is just, it happened. This is the way that it happened. when you're too disconnected from it, you can't learn from it and you can't change it. You have to first acknowledge, well, yeah, you did do these things, but that's not a problem. We can learn from it and then integrate it. So what you're telling me now is you're looking at those counterexamples, you can see your positive intent, and you said something that referenced yourself, like, I know that's me, but it's something, but I know like I can do something different. That's where we want to be with this, and that's what
Okay.
makes you feel stronger. So what happens is when you have counterexamples, one of the reasons why it feels stronger is because now you're more sensitive to feedback of this quality. So
Hmm.
you can tell at the times you're going to be much better in the moment, realizing that, wait a minute, I'm not behaving in alignment with my cue, my quality that I value, and that counterexample being integrated with the positive examples will bring that to your attention, so that you can then say, okay, well, now I need to change my behavior. Like if I have the quality of patience, and then I have my counterexamples are impatient, and I have those integrated, then when I'm being impatient, I know it right away, and I go, okay, course correct, to change this so that I can be more in alignment with what I value. It's when you have your counterexamples separate that you bounce back and forth, and you can get stuck in the counterexamples, or you can be stuck in the purity of your positive examples. But it's always an either or. I'm either it or I'm not it, and that's going to feel unsteady. It's going to feel shaky. It's going to feel uncertain. What's even
Hmm.
worse is when you have your counterexamples in a different modality. So you had both in the visual, and it was good. You had them. You had your counterexamples really close, which tells me that it was already pretty healthy the way that it was. It just wasn't complete. Some people have their counterexamples very far away and in a different modality. So that would be like having, and we can do this real quick. Um, well, for the sake of time, it might take a little while. If you can do it easily, go ahead and do it. If you can't and you're struggling with it, we're not going to try to work through it to make it. But let's just see if we can do it quickly. Go ahead and pull all your counterexamples out.
Okay.
Now turn them into auditory, just voices.
Okay.
Now look at your database without your counterexamples, and now that the counterexamples are voices, now review your database of positive examples. Notice how Q feels.
No, that's hard. I feel like Q and the positive example still feels like a strong Q.
Mhm.
And then the auditory it's like painful to hear because it's like bringing it more to life.
So does your sense of Q feel shakier or more solid than it did with the counterexamples?
It feels no, I think it feels stronger because I now like just from learning from this, like I feel like I know what I was trying to do. Like when I hear my voice, like I know what I was going after.
You're still integrating your counterexamples, even though we we pulled them out. That's what's happening. If you're still making the connection, which is what you're doing now, okay.
Yeah.
So what that tells me is that we would have to work really hard to now undo what we just did, and I don't want to do
Okay.
that. Okay, so go ahead
Okay.
and turn them back into images, and then turn them back, and then integrate them back into your database.
Okay.
Yeah, and you're getting faster at it. The more you practice this, the easier and faster you can do these things. Um, yeah. So what happens is, I just wanted to give you like a side-by-side comparison, but realizing that you were still referencing, anytime you heard the voice, you were still referencing it to your database, told me they're still connected, which is great. It's a testament to the work we did. It worked really, really well.
Okay.
Uh, but what happens is if your database is pure and it doesn't have counterexamples, it might feel good. It might feel kind of euphoric, but it only feels good in that sort of arrogance, narcissistic sort of way, like when you're kind of high on yourself and you're high on a state, which unfortunately a lot of your NLP gurus and teachers That's purposefully what they do in their training to get people to feel that high sensation within themselves, and it's addictive, and people want to, they want more of it, so they buy more trainings or they go to more trainings. It's not what you want though, because it's not grounded. It's not grounded at all. And to take it to an extreme, a narcissist has nothing but pure databases. All of their databases are pure. They've pushed all of their counterexamples away, and that has a very shaky sense of self when you do that. And what that does is you have to constantly try to validate yourself externally. You have to validate yourself by having other people validate you. That means you have to brag about yourself to then get people to acknowledge you're as great as you're saying you are. You feel a need to tell people how great you are. You get into like accomplishments and having tangible objects to sort of support your accomplishments, certificates, diplomas, building buildings, with your name on it, and all these things. So pure databases are actually a very shaky sense of self that you have to constantly try to validate. When you put your counterexamples in there, and by the way, if you put too many counterexamples, you can then create an ambiguous and shaky quality as well. There's a balance here. But if you have those counterexamples in there, you can say, okay, I know I'm Q. I also know that there are sometimes I'm not Q. And sometimes I will, be living life, having an experience, and the feedback I get will contradict Q. But all I have to do is make that course correction. All I have to do is adjust. If you don't have those counterexamples in there and contradictory feedback comes in, it will shatter that database. You either have to block it out, or it will shatter that database, and you will feel terrible about yourself, and you'll feel lost because a quality that you value seems to evaporate right away. And this is the same reason why I tell people either to not do affirmations or to be very careful about what affirmations you're doing. Because if you stand in front of a mirror and tell yourself over and over you're something that you're not, first of all, it creates an internal conflict because there's always a part of you that knows the truth. And so now you're fighting yourself. But what a lot of people are doing is they're pumping up their state. And this is why I don't focus on states as much as qualities. You can pump up that state and you can feel rah, rah. I'm great about, everything's great. I'm great. And then you walk out the front door and you drive out of your driveway and hit a car. And now you're not so great. And now you just shattered that sort of false database that you created. And now you start panicking because you feel like you've lost touch with yourself. So this is why we want to integrate our counterexamples in with our positive databases, because it makes us stronger, it makes us more grounded, it makes us be able to respond to contradictory feedback about who we are very quickly. And it just makes us more accepting of feedback. If somebody wants to give you some constructive criticism, you don't want to fight them or to get away from them. You accept it and you say, okay, well, I'll listen to this. Doesn't mean it's true. Doesn't mean I'm going to believe it, but it's useful information, so I'm going to listen to it. And then I go, okay, well, I either believe that or I don't, or it changes the way I do something because now I've acknowledged it. But if your database is pure and someone's trying to give you constructive criticism, you're going to want to fight that person, or you're going to want to just get away from them. And if you've noticed that with people who are very arrogant or narcissistic, if you confront them on anything, they get belligerent, or they will try to just get away. And so a very healthy database is to have all of your qualities have at least like 10 to maybe 15% counterexamples in them.
So my question is, how I said when I was looking at the counterexamples, like I still saw like the intent of being my cue. Mm-hmm. So like I still felt like me in those, like I was able to like make peace and feel like me, but then there's times where you're not cue. So like, can you explain that? Okay.
So the not cue is good information. The not cue tells me, okay, I got to do something different because I'm not being cue. But if they weren't integrated, that's where you bounce back and forth, and you can have a database of counterexamples. And if that's what you're focused on, then you will start to believe it, that you're really not cue, and it's not true. It's just that, yes, there will be times when you act differently than cue, but you're always cue. Cue doesn't suddenly disappear. Your qualities don't suddenly like evaporate. If you were this quality right before this incident and you continued being the quality after the incident, then you must have been that same quality. It didn't just suddenly disappear. It just that you maybe weren't behaving in alignment with it. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
100%. Yeah. Thank you.
So yeah, so this is a very important point, is that if you take all of your highest values and all of them are showing up in your identity as solid, strong qualities, and that's about a belief. That's not about what, objective truth. That's about a belief. If you believe that and you believe these things about yourself, how do you think you're going to feel? How do you think you're going to live your life? I mean, it's amazing. And if they're that strong and you're that certain about them, so certain about them that even when you make mistakes, that you're still certain about being this quality, and you just get back on the horse and you keep going. It's like, okay, well, yeah, I screwed this up. That's not going to stop me. I acknowledge it. I learn from it, and then I keep going. Whereas most people make a mistake, they doubt themselves as a person, not just doubt the quality. Am I worth it? Am I good enough? And they get stuck there and they don't move forward. But what if you could make a mistake? And in the moment you make the mistake, you don't doubt who you are. You don't doubt the quality that it went against. You just go, oh, okay, now I know. Change behavior, keep going forward.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's okay. Cool.
All right, so I will check back with you to see how life goes. Now, an interesting thing happens. We call it NLP amnesia. When you really solidify your qualities like this, and there's always more work to be done. I mean, we could have gone into your database and tuned it up and everything. The tendency is to just continue living life thinking you always were this way and that you didn't have an issue with these other things before. So what I want you to do is kind of take note of what are you doing? How is this affecting your behavior? If this isn't an issue anymore, if this, you said there was one recurring mistake, now that that's out of your life, as you're living life over the next few days, check in with that. Notice, am I doing anything different? Or am I saying anything different? Am I feeling different? How do I think about the world? Just kind of keep touch with it, because what will happen sometimes, and I even did this with my girlfriend, we transformed a mistake like this. It was very similar to yours. And later we were talking about it, and I said, well, you remember, this thing was kind of tripping you up? And she goes, no, it wasn't. And I was like, yes. And I started giving her more details, and she goes, no, I always knew that I was, she referenced the quality that she is. I never doubted it. And I was like, you cried. We did this, and we transformed this. You cried. Do you remember that? And she was like, oh yeah, I did. And so she thought it was never a problem. And so this happens a lot because we're really restructuring your reality. We're restructuring your sense of self to align with who you want to be more. So it can have the effect of you were always this new reality. You were always this new person, because it generalizes so widely. So anyway, just kind of take a few notes on that, and then we'll follow up with you in a week or a few weeks, and I'll just be curious to know how this is affecting you.
Yeah, that'd be perfect. I will take note for sure.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to do this with me.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was helpful. I could already feel it.
I hope you learned a lot from that demonstration. There was a lot packed into it, so you might want to watch it more than once. You might want to watch it in chunks and focus on different things that I was directing Lauren to do. Also, if you have any questions about anything that I was doing, go ahead and leave that in the comments below. And if you just have a general comment, I'd love to hear from you. So go ahead and comment below. I will respond to you. So remember, if you want to learn how to do this, we will be doing some free classes, and we do those periodically. So check the description, click the link, and see what's going on. If you like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to this channel so you can get these videos on a regular basis. And last but not least, if you can think of someone who might enjoy this video, might benefit from this video, a family member or a friend, make sure you share it with them. Take care.